without further ado, all-star cast. We've got James Foley from Alliance Leisure. He's the commercial director. We've got Paul Woodford. Sorry, Paul, using your Sunday name. I know it's Woody, and it's only your wife that calls you Paul when you've been naughty as well. So, but we've got Paul, the marketing and partnerships director, and then last but not least is John Leaver, head of marketing, who we were delighted to have, believe it or not, last February over at Razzle when we were raring to go 2020, bring it on, regional seminars, and then lo and behold, a pandemic struck us. So here we go. Everyone, welcome to Building Healthy Communities, and over to James. Thanks now.
Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dawn. And it's, obviously it's great to see everybody today. There's some familiar faces that I now can't see because I've obviously got the slide deck on screen, but it's wonderful to be sharing a bit of time with you, and obviously for you taking your time out of your day. I know you'll all be busy with the reopening strategies and obviously customers coming back, so we really do appreciate it. So, fundamentally today what we were here to talk about was a session around building communities and building healthy communities, but more to talk about how we would look to achieve that. So Dawn Ann just said, in terms of the three of us, myself, Woody and John, we've clearly saved the best till last. Taking the penalties in the Euros. We've got John coming up last on the presentation today, but what we really want to understand is how can we connect the dots with healthy communities and make sure that we get some information over to you in that respect. So if you can just bear with me, because I'm having a couple of issues flipping to the slides, so hopefully you can all see on the slides at the moment. John did say to me this morning, why is the text all funny? And I did say I just felt like a quirky morning this morning, so that's why. No special reason at all. But I suppose what I'm trying to understand and say there is, are we still doing what we've always fundamentally done? And we're talking today about, do you have the facilities and venues to help support a healthy community in your community? And the way that I tend to look at this is very much taken from a lot of European influences, that the reality is a lot of you are sat there around the table with 50, 100,000, 200,000 plus residents who are already members of your community, delivering services as leisure trusts, cultural trusts, with the host authority that sits as the facility and the asset holder. You already have, sorry, I'm just going to admit Greg, it's currently over the presentation here. We already have access to what I would call a member, and that is a member within your community. But unfortunately, we're often quite misguided, myself included in our industry, that we default to a member as being somebody who pays a direct debit, who comes into your gym potentially, once a week, maybe not even once a week. And actually, we may have 200,000 plus members, but what about the 98,000 that may be active in or outside of our facilities, or even not? And do we really engage them? I mentioned to John and Woody yesterday, I kind of got used to working from home and the fact that I can have my lunch whilst watching Place in the Sun on Channel 4. And I really like how when you look at the Europeans over there, it tends to be when you're looking at a house in somewhere like France, the phrase always comes over that there are so many activities within the community, you get access to the communal pool as a matter of right. And I think we have a lot to learn from our European counterparts, and clearly also we have a lot to learn in terms of having different weather as well. So when you look at that and break that down, it got me thinking to myself on this one, useful to look at how we communicate to our communities, the 100,000 people, if I call it, that are out there, and what our facility names itself says to them. So, reading that verbatim, a leisure centre, fundamentally it's saying it's a large public building full of not very exciting things. That's the Collins Dictionary reference of a leisure centre, which fundamentally, if you're looking at, is that going to entice people to come into our communities to be active and to be healthy, I would argue no. So basically, your average Joe or Josephine public, it's a big box with not great things inside it, is what we're telling people a leisure centre is. And we've got to try and change that, certainly if we're going to make an impact on building a healthier community with the challenges that we have coming out of this COVID pandemic. So a pop quiz for you, very quick couple of slides, and we should have mentioned at the start that you can use the chat function to drop in any questions that you may have as we're going through here that we'll break up the session with. But a pop quiz for you, clearly pre-COVID, because everybody's not socially distanced. I've named the year. If we've got anybody that's wants to take a punt on that through the chat section or flash your microphone up, what year do you think we were actually delivering that cycle class in? Any takers?
2004.
2004 is a very good guess, Johnny. Very good guess indeed. We're on the class of 2003. So there you go. Good marks, top marks. You get a silver star today, Johnny, this morning. So moving through, do we actually think we've progressed a great deal there in terms of the activities that we're trying to engage and build a healthy community? So the same question to anybody on the call. What year are we looking at there? Taking a second step through the journey of group cycling.
I'll come in and go for 2014.
2014, so a good stab at that. We're on the class of 2012 there. So obviously, you know, the reason why I'm doing this is I walk around a number of facilities that actually I still see some class of 23s happening, and I certainly see a lot of class of 2012s happening. And if we were to jump forward to the modern day, what year do you think that we'd be talking about with that studio? Any takers?
2018.
Very close indeed. So we're talking about the class of 2017 here. Now, obviously, that particular slide there has got some really immersive, interesting technology engaged with it. And I'm not saying it is outdated, and it's still a really great example of where we're at and the type of services and the facility and service interventions we should be delivering to our communities. What we need to think about when we're looking at facility development and building that healthy community is, what will this look like in 2030? The reason why I quite like looking at development from this perspective is we can see, sorry, just let somebody in there, we can see how things have progressed in a reasonably short space of time, if we're talking a decade's worth, just over. And when we're talking about redoing facility developments in the sphere of what Alliance Leisure deliver at the moment, what I can say is if we went back to 2012, that doesn't cut the mustard now. And certainly if we're looking forward to how we're going to grow participation in this decade leading up to 2030, actually we've got to have one eye ahead of where we are presently. And it's a really interesting thought process when you try to, I suppose, process that in your mind of what we need to be looking at. Now, the reality is, it's an interesting when you take a view on where the digital revolution is leading us. You know, and we must listen to that. It's the biggest challenge that our current generation faces, but certainly the next generation, my daughter, 15 years old, you know, I like to think I'm reasonably compliant in all things technical and digital, but I'm light years behind what 15-year-olds are doing in school presently, and certainly what's going to influence their activity levels moving forward. However, equally, bricks, mortar and the great outdoors have such a significant part to play. And going back to my place in the sun reference earlier, it does, of course, rain a lot in the UK, certainly where I live in Greater Manchester. And we don't have the benefit of living in Australia with great sunny outdoors. So the bricks and mortar part of the equation of facility interventions with service interventions has a huge role to play in building that healthier community. So asking the question, I suppose, and to yourself to think about, what is important to you and your community, and do we really have those facilities and service interventions that are fit for purpose in 2021, specifically coming out of COVID with the new ways of working that we've had to adopt. Now, I'm a definitely more than a half glass full kind of guy. And I would like to think we have, you know, we have the foundations. I wouldn't sit here and think that for me, representing a business that we're passionate about contributing to the industry and sector that we work in, that we don't already have a significant foundation and a base. But what I will say, and the challenge to me within our business and to all of us, is there is a lot more we can do. So when we're looking at facility transformation, we must look at the obvious, but we must view this as asset-based community development. This is no longer about looking at a new build facility that requires a sports hall, requires a studio space, and requires some swimming space. What we must be looking at is what are the strengths of the community and building our assets based around those requirements. It sounds incredibly obvious to me. It should sound incredibly obvious to you, hopefully. However, my experience tells me that's not what's translating when we're looking at developments across the UK, and we've got to look at why that matters and the role that we can play. So fundamentally why that matters, 22% of the UK population live in poverty. I'm very lucky that I'm not one of that percentile figure, and socially deprived mortality rates in the UK are up to a decade worse in deprived areas, and people in socially deprived areas will spend up to 18 years fewer in good health. And I'm very passionate around the role we can collectively and collaboratively play in that, of making sure that our, let me call it, health, wellbeing, leisure, sport provision, rather than the leisure centre, becomes an anchor institution. Now, for any of you that have delved into NHS terminology and the way that the NHS and primary care trusts perceive themselves as being that anchor institution, I think the role that we have to play is really at the forefront of that. Using a phrase that I'm sure Woody will talk to you in a great deal about later, it's actually meeting the community where they are, rather than expecting people to come into our facilities because we've got a certain level of activities available and we've got a sports hall and we've got a gym. It's actually meeting them where they are with the activities and services designed to meet their requirements. Within that, that is creating engaging journeys. And I will say, and hopefully, you'll get this from John and Woody later, it's simplifying how we communicate with people from a persona perspective, to make sure that the actual, the audience, the community that we're trying to engage, understand what it is we deliver as operators, and how we're best positioned to engage to create a whole host of benefits for them as an anchor institution. This is a kind of a take a liberty slide in some respects, and I don't mean that by saying it's a take a liberty to minimise the viewpoint on the effects of physical activity on mental well-being. However, if I do have one tip for you today, on the left-hand side, if you look at the left-hand side of that screen, it's to buy a book by a gentleman called Stephen Bartlett, called Happy Sexy Millionaire, which is probably the antithesis of what the book's about, and just gain an insight into the challenges that the next generation faces. It kind of opens your mind around the difficulties that I don't like the word Gen Z, let's just call it the next generation, the growing generation face, and how we must adapt our services and facilities and position to engage them. Part of that, it talks about loneliness, which of course is a huge factor coming out of COVID. And coming out of COVID, this is not just looking at fitness and gyms and can we put them in a bigger space because we've got the same capacity. We've got real problems here in terms of the effects of people's mental well-being coming out of COVID. And we have to seriously look at how we can engage in a more productive manner, because we all know, and we wouldn't have come into this industry, when we all started out as lifeguards, we probably could have gone to Tesco, working on the shop floor there. I believe everybody on the call came into this industry because they're passionate about making a change and making a difference. So that's, if you don't take anything from today, please go on Amazon and buy that book. It'll open your eyes a little. So in terms of creating the engaging facilities, the Health Hub approach, I think we're all very familiar with, and it creates that huge opportunity to open doors and change long-term behaviours. I'm very keen and focused within our business on how that works with familial-based participation that has a clear and consistent way in which to embed this generationally. I'm long enough in the tooth to have worked in this sector where we've had strategy after strategy after strategy that tries to introduce new ways of working. And for some reason, we still seem to be where we were when we developed the first one 25 years ago. Now, that's not a criticism of development of strategies, because life evolves, pressures evolves and the way that we need to react to them also has to evolve. But what I do believe is that we need to look at our facility interventions that give that clear, consistent pathway to embed generationally. Now, if I look typically at leisure centres, we will always have the drop off at 13, 14 years, and we won't embed activity that has generational participation with children, with parents, with grandparents, and we've got to try and make a change in the way that we look at that. So, interestingly for me, when you look at where we've come from and where we need to get to in terms of designing our facility interventions, as I will call it, you know, the shift in our industry towards a 360 comprehensive holistic experience has been around for a while. I think we all get that, but I think what has shifted and what we all must be cognizant of is it's no longer a nice to have. It's a must have scenario for members of our community when they are looking at engaging with us in our facilities and services to have that holistic experience. It's not something that's just a bolt on, using the fitness analogy. It's not something that's a nice to have. It's not something that is a USP. It's not something that adds value. It's something that is part of the core service design, part of the core facility design, and a must have scenario. Today's member, I'll call it today's community, if you like, for me, when I mentioned earlier about the fact that sometimes we get too focused on a member of your facility just being the paid direct debit member. You've got members who play squash, you've got members who are in the sports hall, you've got members who come to Tumble Touch, you've got members who come to a wellbeing mindfulness session. That's actually your community and the community that you have available to you. They want so much more, and you know, more than simply working out in the gym. They want to look at that holistic pathway for their health. When you're building the communities, I'm certain that all of us on the call here would absolutely appreciate a way to alleviate and manage the stresses of life. That goes without saying from my perspective, and ultimately to live your most fulfilled life. Now, the question I would ask you to ask yourself, and hopefully again Woody and John will resonate this a bit later, is does the way that your facility is designed and do the way that your service is designed, and importantly, because facility development as a developer is not the only answer, is the way that you message to your community effective in allowing them to engage with you and understand what you deliver. Now, I would argue that we've been a bums on seats industry, driven through fitness memberships for way too long, and something has to change. We've got to look at this 360-degree experience as a must-have, not a nice-to-have. And that, for me, you know, the right-hand side there, it's more than that shiny new rack of dumbbells or an extra class. It's a fundamental shift in the way that we design our services and the way that we design our facilities. I have a very simplistic view of how, as Alliance, we look at creating such engaging facilities, and the left-hand side there is probably what my mind is like on most days. It's a bit of a mess, quite scrambled, hence why I talk a lot to try and get the information out. And the way that we look at that as a business is trying to look at these patterns, the insight, the uncertainty, and this comes from the Central Office of Design, by the way. It's not a James Foley or Alliance concept here, but to try and distill that from an evidence base of what works from a design perspective, but is innovative. Now, we have years of learning around the virtual table here of working within our facilities and sectors to lean on. What we don't often have is the time to sit back, undertake the research, develop the concept prototype approach, and ensure that we have innovation in design moving forward. We always tend to default, for some reason, to what we know and the latest fad and craze. We don't look at the years of learning that we've had and take that reflective view back and how we actually build that when we're looking at creative facilities. When we're looking at that, for me, if I'm viewing it as of today, I would typically look at it as a facility design, creating the engaging facilities under a 3-channel approach. That would be the physical facility itself, the outside the box facility, which I'm calling your green spaces, you know, as local authority partnered leisure trusts, cultural trusts, as most of you are on the call. the reality is that the biggest provider of outdoor green space is the local authority. It's not Pure Gym, it's not a fitness provider, it's not your local PT, it's not somebody delivering parkrun. The biggest operator of open spaces is the local authority. I think sometimes we're a bit disjointed in how we view that as this three-channel approach to engage with our communities. And the third part is digital, which I'm not going to talk a great deal about because I don't want to steal the thunder of Woody and John moving forward. But when we're talking about how we maximise the engagement, contribute towards local strategic priorities and create physical interventions, what we must look at are these three channels as I would see it. Now, addressing the first channel of physical facility development, an example here of how we approach this, and I make no apologies today that I'm not sat here as commercial director of Alliance throwing up a load of pretty pictures of Alliance facility developments, because I could share those with you at any point. What I want to talk to you about is the nub of how do we do that, how do we approach it, and how do we take everything that I've just talked about and distill that into a pathway to actually create these engaging environments. And what you have there is what we call the pre-occupancy wheel, and it's used to scan the horizon of the facility and to ensure that when we're actually designing, we're not defaulting to saying we need a sports hall, we need a gym, oh, by the way, we need a bit more of a gym because COVID's affected capacity. For me, we've got to look at this in a smarter way around how community social contact sits within their accessibility, given the older population, and do we have engaging enough facilities to attract them? Have we got appropriate transport links? It sounds very obvious. Health and well-being. Have we got a clear identity and belonging? So what you have in front of you there is a tested example with a client that I ran through about 3 months ago for them to give me their viewpoint on whether their facility met any of those parameters. As you can see, they weren't very enthusing about their own approach, and that comes through the historic nature of the facilities and the historic nature of the service interventions. What we need to do is make sure that the spokes of the wheel are full, so that when we're attracting and creating these engaging facilities from a design perspective, we fulfil each of those concepts of what we call the pre-occupancy wheel. When we do that, however, that presents a whole host of dilemmas and opportunities for us, and we have to be really clear of what matters most. Each of you as Leisure Trust will have a set of articles of association that give you the vision and mission of what you're trying to achieve. And I'm not sat here today saying that the answer to all of the problems that hit within Scotland and the UK all lie in the hands of everybody on this call. I'm not saying that they all lie in the hands of Leisure Trusts, and I'm not saying they all lie in the hands of leisure providers either. What I am saying, however, is we all have a duty and obligation to make sure that we deliver our best inputs as leisure operators and providers and facility designers to make sure we deliver on what matters most to our communities. So this is another approach that we take when we're looking at how to create these engaging facilities, to be really clear on what the parameters are. And this often presents a whole host of challenges when you're asking people to say, you know, do you want to drive and encourage community cohesion, or do you want to improve the operational efficiency of that facility that has a real tangible factor of pounds, shillings and pence? I'm showing my age with the shillings. You know, and there's a real counterbalance of that. It's a challenge. I'm not saying, you know, the answer is simple here, but I think what you have to distill this down to is what matters most to your community, and it's not a one-size-fits-all scenario. Now, for us, this approach works when we're undertaking developments on a single site, and it also works for us when we're looking at a wider portfolio, such as work we've undertaken recently with our partners in Durham, which is a county council, and looking at the county-wide approach of not a one-size-fits-all scenario. And it's really challenging when you're looking at how that works across 10, 12, 13, 14 sites. So the natural default is, well, we've got this community over here, they have to have the same as this community over here, and they have to have the same as this community over here. because otherwise, you know, politically it might not go so well. And when you have to kind of unravel that and say, well, each community has a different need, and actually we need to design the facility and the services around that need, not around what we think is required. It's a bit of a game changer when you start to think in that way. And it sounds incredibly obvious, and I know people attempt to do this, but I genuinely don't think anybody's grasped that wholly, and how to, you know, prioritise what matters most. And what that manifests itself looking at in design is taking account of how we then programme. You know, so a bugbear of mine, and I know Woody and John will talk about this later, is we always look at the member journey for a direct debit paying member only, because members of our facilities are fitness paying members. You know, what if I don't like the gym? What if I'm one of the 85% that aren't active within our facilities? And actually, what if I'm one of the 15% that really wants to go to the gym, but unfortunately, I just don't get what you're offering to me. I don't get the facility design, I don't get the service design, and I don't get the way that you message that to me. So it's really important that you build that profile up of what you're trying to achieve within a community, and those types of things will move from one box to the other, and have an influence in the way that you shape and design that facility to make it as engaging as possible. A couple of very brief examples of that, of what really resonate with me. So this is a facility over in the US. It's actually a tennis specific facility, but I'm pretty sure if you look at that, what you don't see is tennis courts. In fact, you have to look quite far in the distance to see some court markings on the back and some very small nets. What you do have is a simple, effective, engaging environment that will actually make the activity fun. It will attract new participants, but importantly, it will attract generational activity, because it's an environment that's positive for kids, children to engage in, but it's actually a positive environment for families to engage in, and importantly, to get people moving. Now, we're looking at some really interesting concepts. Again, here's another over in the US at the moment. This is the Tempest Academy in the US. If you Google that, you'll see some really cool videos that, if Microsoft Teams worked very well, I'd probably show for you today, but I'll spare you the pain of that. But you know, watch this space is I suppose what I would say, where I do genuinely believe that the UK has a huge opportunity to build on what I would call the traditional sports pathway. So that is taking the foundations, the fundamental of sports like gymnastics, but having a real opportunity to create an innovative environment. You know, if I looked at this environment in example, to be able to create introductory gymnastics, tumble tots, pathways through to gymnastics with clever zoning, introductory free running, introductory freestyle dance, adventure play, linking that to products such as Tag Active, which I'll touch on shortly, introducing a really cool F&B environment to fundamentally shift away from four walls and, you know, a block that's got some activity space in. And I think the key to creating engaging facilities doesn't stop in the design. In fact, it doesn't start with the design. It starts with the service programming. And I think if you work backwards from looking at a concept and conceptualizing the types of services that you can program and design, and then allow the facility to be reflective of that, that's the way forward. Unfortunately, for 20, 30, 40 years, and still SE now, we design the facility and then look at what programming we can put in the box, and it's the wrong way round. We need to look at how we flip that on its head. So that's the box. Think outside the box, no pun intended, no box required. I said to you earlier that operating in the local government sector, as we all are, you know, your partner and your host authority is the biggest provider of out-of-the-box facilities in your locality, the biggest provider of out-of-the-box facilities to your community. I would challenge whether we think like that often. We you know, even with combined cultural trusts, of which there are some phenomenal examples, I don't necessarily see that real joined up approach and strategy of being able to dovetail developments with the way that we look inside and outside the box. And the way that we tend to approach that is how you know, break down and apply the same principles of the physical facility development to create sustainably active environments. So that's looking in a greater detail, rather than looking at a park as a space, and rather than looking at a playing pitch as a space in a playing pitch strategy. It's actually looking at it from a service design concept to say, what do the community really need, and have we got the provision, and can we create a sustainably active environment that will drive participation through and create that engaging facility outside of the box. Now, that, when I say sustainable, that means clean and green. Clearly that is a given, but also financially stable, financially sustainable, but ultimately creating environments that will have the longevity to attract communities and keep them engaged, and not being ashamed to say that commercial elements are required to achieve that. You know, we're not sat here all on you know, lots of money that's being pump primed into leisure at the moment. We're scrambling at the surface to try to ensure that we actually do have the financial leverage to deliver these outcomes to our communities. So it's not being ashamed to say that we need to address the commerciality of that to allow us to address the social outputs, that I would call them, and the sustainable activity outputs. And that can come in a whole range of solutions, ranging from you know, delivery of outdoor fitness through allotment play, allotments that deal with mental health and well-being, to really innovative activities. For us as a business, it's a real area of interest, and something that has become more of a stock part of what we address on a daily basis. We currently delivering a number of active park environments proposals and on site at places like Brentwood. We've been engaged with Bristol on their future park strategy, looking at the 30+ parks across their estate to see how we can bring what apologies on the Scottish Leisure Network here, but what Sport England bring in their Uniting the Movement policy around that active environment approach. And I think the development of the active environment is something that is often incredibly siloed from a leisure provision. And what we're saying is, in this 3-channel approach of your physical asset, your outdoor asset, and the digital way that you deliver your services, you must look at that in a more cohesive way, rather than we've got a new leisure centre to develop, what are we going to do with it? And we'll have a sports hall and we'll have a swimming pool. You've got to look at this joined up service design within the community. Kind of things that brings itself through when you're looking at the types of products would be innovative things like Tag Active, if I'm turning to the digital channel. So bringing digital technology into physical activity. I haven't queued the video up for fear of killing Microsoft Teams today, but how do you create activity that is normally static and then passively active, to gamify that and introduce new challenges that bring new audiences to drive physical activity in an environment that, as I say, is sustainable and engaging. And you know, if anybody wants any information on that, I'm quite happy to share that. What I thought I would finish up with you today really is just leave you with an example. A client I'm currently working with who kindly said I could share this. Calderdale in Yorkshire is one of the 12 local delivery pilots for Sport England in England, and they have a Vision 2024 strategy, which is all about creating that active population. It's great for me because at the heart of what they're trying to do is this indoor, outdoor, physical, outdoor, digital type approach to how they create this active population. So it mirrors a lot of the ethos of how we work as Alliance, and integral to that is a replacement facility in Halifax, and which we're currently at the end of the pre-construction period. How do we ensure that is now embedded within the wider infrastructure within Calderdale? So we're not just looking at building a leisure centre, we're looking at the infrastructure around that, the facility design, the service design, the digital design, to fundamentally create that most engaging facility possible. So that's me in a nutshell. Reasonably on time there, Woody, John, for passing over. If anybody does have any queries, we can do Q&A at the end, and I'll take the presentation off the screen. And as I say, a whistle-stop tour, more than happy to pick up with people at a later point.
Cheers, James. Can you see my screen, guys? No.
Yes, we can. Yeah,
we can.
Brilliant, thank you. Cool. So yeah, we will. As Dawn kindly said, I'm known as Woody. My wife's the only one who generally calls me Paul when I'm generally in trouble. And great to see loads of people I know on the call. And as James said, we will pick up some questions on there. So if there's any key things you want to whack in the chat or think about, ready for the end, then John will pick up some questions at the end. But my view as Director of Marketing and Partnerships at Alliance and Head of TA6 is to really look at how we get as many people within your community active as possible. So what we want to share with you is the passion we have, but strategies that we're currently working with 60 operators across the UK on how they can bounce back initially. So I am going to focus part of my presentation on the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic. It'd be crazy not to, because of the impact it's had on your business. Obviously, a lot of what James has talked about is a long-term strategy as well to transform your facilities. And I made some notes that the key bit here is that research that goes into, I love with the developments, it's the research that goes into creating facilities that match the need. So that you've got something ultra relevant and innovative for your community. I think that's the message that I really want to echo, that not just to have the same thing that you've got before, really review what your community need and then start to touch and reach out and attract those people that wouldn't normally come into the facility, the people, those hard to reach groups, the parts of your community that don't see your facility as somewhere that they feel comfortable to exercise, and a lot don't feel comfortable to exercise anywhere. So, I'm really going to focus on Johnny, as we're going to do a bit of a double act on, I'm going to kick off. John's our head of marketing and our digital guru, and he's going to really give you lots of things that you can practically do with marketing. I'm going to give a lot of the philosophy of how TA6 feel that you can attract different groups, and then start to head into some real practical things you can do in terms of strategies for those. And then we'll really hit you with loads of things that you should be looking at. So that when you go back at the ranch with your teams, or when you review the video, you can sit down and think, are we nailing these things? Are we really resonating with the different groups? So yeah, if you've got any questions, please share them at the end. We'd love to answer those. So now some of you may have seen some of the webinars we've been doing, and I don't apologise to put a couple of slides in. I've done in every one of them through the last year. There is this phrase out there called the new normal, which I think is overused, but the new normal refers to where we are now. We are coming out of lockdown in different ways and at different paces. The vaccinations are kicking in. I'm at 3 o'clock today. I have my second vaccination, and I'm really thankful for that. But the new normal is this place that we've talked about through lockdown, of how people think, what's it going to be like when we start to open up? How am I going to be? What's the new normal going to be? And I really like the term the new different, and nicked it from the HSBC advert. I don't want your businesses or our clients just to be normal. Normal feels a bit mediocre to me. It's about really reflecting now and thinking, how are we going to be different? Our customers are different. So I'm looking at your facility mix, but how are we going to be different now to resonate with the community, to get them active, and not going back to the way that we marketed before March last year? Yes, there were some great things that were working, but your consumers, your teams, your communities, they are different, and they've been touched by that. So embracing the new different, I think, will really transform your marketing messages and the impact that you get. And also the new different on how you will, I'm going to look at that in detail with you in my little mini 20 minutes here, though, is the experience you deliver when people get involved with your brand, your facilities, the services you offer. Is it engaging? Are you really delivering an experience with the facility mix you've got, but the actual facility experience you get that is going to make people want to come back regularly and feel like they're thriving in their life? So yeah, embrace the new different has been something I've talked a lot about in all my sessions, and something me and John were really keen to do is rather than just the what you should do, is the how you should do it. So the start of my session is a lot of theory. What you can do, this is aspirational, let's really go for this, but we really want to give you some practical how as well, rather than just theory. Practical things you can do tomorrow to transform your marketing, to transform the experience that you're delivering. As you start to reopen and open different facilities, you'll be able to really embrace those more. So I thought the title of this whole session, and is healthy, is a key part of that. And so really trying to embrace what being healthy means. And the Dale Green and Whitehead model, 1991, that's used by the NHS Public Health. You could say it's quite dated, 30 years, but really focus on what are the determinants of whether you're healthy or whether your community are healthy. And that base core level of the model is that generally the fundamentals are passed down genetically, your age, your sex, and the genetics you get from family. We can't really do much about those. But the second two levels, our sector is totally geared up. The next stage of whether you're healthy is the lifestyle choices that you're making, and whether you're active, your diet, how hard you work, whether you are working, whether you have addictions, how is your mental health, how are you coping. And I felt the model's really relevant for coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's so much social pressure, cultural pressure on people, the journey people have been on. Are they coping? Are they able to deal with the stresses of coming out of lockdown? Are your teams? And that then flows into the second level is, do I have a strong social and community network? I love the phrase social standing. It's about self-esteem. How do I feel? Do I have groups that my family, my friends, my colleagues, the network of people that I've built, and James mentioned about the communities rather than members that I've bonded with and connected with at my local leisure centre, or the activities that I connect with. So the fundamentals of being healthy, key determinants of it. Yes, there's so much, a lot out of our control, but we can make a massive difference on lifestyle choices and how people feel connected, especially coming out of the last 14, 15 months that we've had that's going to carry on. So I wanted to start with some learnings. What have we learned that is going to influence your marketing, your strategy for customer experience, to really get as many people in your community active? And I think the first one, and we talked about this as a team, is that I think we've identified that the sector was broken pre-March last year in some fundamental ways. There were cracks in a sector that we love. We're all passionate. And again, as James mentioned, all of us have got into this sector because of a sporting interest or exercise, or wanting to make a difference to people and getting people active in that whole journey that we've come through. But fundamentally, we lost our way, and I wanted to share the cracks were showing. All it was going to take was a global pandemic or a financial crisis for it to tip it, and it's done that in a big way. So we can embrace some of the fundamentals and really focus on those coming out now. And I think the first one, from a membership perspective, is that we accepted loads of people got involved in our products but didn't come. We accepted with our membership base that 30–40% potentially of our customers, we classed them as a sleeper, that were paying regularly but didn't come. In fact, our business model was created on them, really. They have left. They have gone over the last year through the 3 different lockdowns. They have cancelled. And what we're finding with clients now, and you've probably experienced this, is the May, June and July runs, we're seeing that they are cancelling. Yes, things feel buoyant for a lot of people in terms of sales and acquisition. There's a lot of rejoiners coming in there, but we'd accepted a high percentage of sleepers, and we can't do that going forward. We've got to try and have an offering that engages people so they want to attend regularly. And that linked into that first experience, and not being what I call delusional parents. I meet lots of people in a very senior level. We work with them as to be a critical friend, who they're like those parents who have got a kid who is a pain in the butt, but they never see it. And you speak to a lot of senior staff and senior management teams in leisure, and they're like, no, service is great, we nailed it. But when you actually drill down, it's not happening. You have to deliver an amazing customer engagement strategy. The experience people have when they come into the box, the facilities, a phrase that James has used, and I'm going to use loads. We have to deliver fantastic customer service and an experience that drives value, not rubbish inductions or lack of content or grumpy receptionists or teams that are out of control that aren't really connected or embracing delivering service. We have to nail really positive, strong customer engagement strategies. Fundamentally, there was loads of operators who accepted poor engagement levels. The third one, and that links really into a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about marketing, is we're obsessed with offers. Everything was offer led. And John and I and the team, we really looked and researched at what a lot of the big chains and clients that we were working with, their competitors, were going to do in January when there was supposed to be the big opening before we were locked down. And everyone was just clicking back into an offer strategy of what they'd done before. Promotions play a part, but you have to lead with inspiring brand-led campaigns. The big message you'll get from both John and I is your brand has got to stand out, and you've got to. This is your chance to inspire people to get active, to put their health first. COVID's taught us that you have to be healthy. Not just attract the same people which are doing a half price first month, or your first £1 for January offer, or it's spring into fitness, here's a month trial. Yes, you might have those as a blended approach, inspiring campaign, and as a hook to maybe get you over the line, but leading with offers. Go back and check your marketing now. Are you leading with offers? If so, you're just going to attract the same 14-15% that we did before, and you're not really going to stand out and inspire people to. So we're going to talk a lot about how you resonate with different groups, create personas, create a campaign that can attract people and inspire people. I want to be part of that, not just because there's a deal. The second learning was your customers have changed, and I think we have all been through a journey. One of those, some people think, no, COVID's not changed me. I'm the same as I was before. I just can't wait to get back to normal. But we're on a call now. Look here, we would have met before. Technology has changed all of us. Expectations on cleanliness and safety have changed all of us. Value for money, everything is, what am I spending my money on? Is my job safe? How are my family? I've got a puppy, lockdown puppy, changed my life. Everyone has been touched some way through this journey, and your marketing team and your delivery team have to embrace that journey when they're thinking about how they're going to resonate with people. And the products that you offer, the services that you offer, the member journeys, the customer journeys, the flows, have to embrace this journey people have been on. I put it into 3 key phases that some of you may have seen on webinars I've done before. We've all reflected on our life through this period, this year, 14 months, and really we've appreciated some things and some things we haven't. But in a lot of cases, people have decided the new normal, this is how I'm going to be, or I'm going to be different, potentially. And if they're in a positive place to make a difference, or they're scared to, you need to give people confidence that you're the supplier, the operator, the brand of choice for them to be active within. It's big and bold, and I want to change my life. I want to be fitter and active. And some just want to get back to the way they were and really trust that you're open and you're back to normal, and I can get in my classes, I can have a swim. But you have to have a campaign message, a marketing message, a voice out there that is inspiring people and reassuring it the same way, not just we offer this, here's a deal. Really understanding how people are feeling, and creating persona-led marketing, which we're going to talk a lot about. The other point of learning is, I think, is understanding that our customers are more than just a number, and you'll see in a second. I think it's not just about memberships, but we've treated people like this. So there's 1,000 people there, 1,000 different people. Imagine you've got one of your sites that has 1,000 customers on your membership line, for instance. We've got to the point that we actually treat them as though they're just a club live figure, a number, when actually they're individuals that have all had a journey they've been on, and they all have aspirations, goals, lifestyle pressures. Everyone's different. They're coming from different backgrounds, different demographics, and the challenge for us is, how do we, with limited staff, limited marketing budgets, resonate with everybody? And the key is to chunk people into groups, but from your marketing perspective. But then when people do come in, you take time to connect with them, and commit to that. So rather than looking at people as sales, cancellations, club live, yield, how much they're paying, how long they've been with us, important metrics to manage your business, not denying that. But as a real culture shift for you is, are you connecting with them? as individuals? Are you really trying to deliver a customer experience pathway that resonates with that person, and that they can get the most value out of being part of your community, your brand community? And that's a phrase I really want you to embrace as well. Do people feel they're part of your brand, or do they just feel they go to the gym at one of your centres, or they swim at one of your sites? Do they feel like they're part of Angus Alive? Do they feel like they're part of Edinburgh Leisure? Do they feel like that they're, you know, a Glasgow Live member, customer, and part of that community, rather than just I go to this session here? It's crucial that we embrace that, so we get long-term loyalty out of people, and and we're making an impact out of their life. But I'm probably virtual slap for myself. Both those points are about memberships, and we talked about this in our debrief session before. You know, I think we've become obsessed with everything is about memberships, and in fact, yes, income-wise, memberships, swimming lessons will be your big ticket items that you've got to hit your numbers on. Totally get it, and you've got to have a strategy. But there's so much more to your offering, so much more. People can pay as they go. They can come for an event, they can be at a party, they can they can be tasting this and experiencing it in so many different ways. It's not just about being on a direct debit, it's about being a member of your brand community. So does your physical offering attract lots of different groups, but do you offer the same sort of pathways? Because if someone's playing badminton regularly, they don't get anywhere near the level of opportunity and service to make a difference to their life than a gym member. So can we touch and reach out and make an impact to more of your community, your customers, than just people who are taking out a membership? And that links into this phrase I've developed about making impact in the box or out of the box. And I'm really pleased with this. Actually, I searched for a leisure centre, and there is actually a Woodford Leisure Centre. I haven't actually put that in. It's in Hull, I think. I don't know if it's built yet, but there is a Woodford Leisure Centre. But so the focus has to be twofold, and this is this pivot to digital that we've had to do on lockdown. Is people were working out at home or doing their own thing or going for walks or on demand, and all of you have had to pivot to a digital offering. But now we're focused, it has to be a priority on the impact you're making when they come within the box, within your facility. How much focus are your team having on making sure that experience is delivering a service that means they're getting the most out of the product, the service, the element that they're using? They feel like they're thriving and they want to come back. And your local leisure centre has a massive opportunity to stand out now and be different from a budget gym, from a big private brand, from a standalone club, from an independent, because you have such variety of facilities within the box, and embracing what James said of extending that and embracing and being creative and innovative in what you offer, but really focusing on that you're creating experience with your team. You're not going to accept that poor level of engagement that maybe we had before. Don't be a delusional parent and just think it's great. Truly deliver an experience that means people are going to want to consistently come back, and they're achieving, they're feeling like they're progressing, they feel connected. So you have to nail that service in the box. But then it's the big question, I think, that me and John have been asking with our TA6 team is, can you make an impact once they leave on their life, on their health? We talked about at the beginning, the lifestyle choices they make. How do you embrace the technology that we've got, and maybe the digital side, that you're providing a service, a connection once they leave? And I've got some examples, and some of these may resonate with you, that can you help people make better choices and have better willpower? You know, I struggle with the apple versus the donut thing every day, definitely. But can we help that? Can we encourage people to get outside more and be more active and have fresh air, you know, and really embrace being active outside of going to their class or having a swim? Uber Eats and Deliveroo in my house, my kids constantly now feel like that's just something they want to do every weekend. And I'm like, no, that's a treat, surely. But we've become lazy. We've become used to just impulsively making decisions and not really putting our health and our diet first. So can we help people understand that nutrition is a good thing and really makes a big difference? Can we de-stress people and help? Can we help people kick habits that they maybe have that are having an impact on their health? Can they work out at home in a way that actually means it's the weekend, I don't want to go in, but I can still work out? with a brand that I trust? Can we make people feel connected, sleep better, maybe be in control of habits that they feel aren't really that healthy for them? I love this one. Are they really being social, or do we feel we're in this virtual world and actually getting out and connecting with people within your facilities make a real difference to their self-esteem and that social capital that I talked about that really makes people feel healthy, that they're not just in a virtual world? Can we help them get a better work-life balance, and ultimately can we reduce the risk of them getting COVID in the future or other long-term medical conditions? So the view, and we've chatted this a lot, and it's something for you to go back. I haven't got the answer to this. I've got an opinion, but should you offer services for all of those things? Some of you will open smoking cessation courses or help dietary nutrition, but on demand. But while we were in lockdown, it was okay to have pretty naff quality home workouts. But now, should you really do that, or should you do it properly? Should you invest in a studio and do it correctly and really embrace that? Or should you use a third party because they do it a lot better? Are there partners you should be working with that help make that impact, or can you offer those additional things they do when they're not within the facility that are making a positive impact? Our view has come to smash service when they're in the box, deliver it, but really embrace, can you make more impact when they're not within the facility, through your app, through social media, through content, through support? How can we really make people feel connected to your brand and value, not just on the activity they do? And I think it's a really exciting opportunity, but how do we make it happen it's a big deal. So yeah, something for you to go back with your teams and chat through. Okay, some of the how, before I hand over to John. So we have two views of how to create an amazing customer experience, which is our priority, to really then, once you've got an amazing customer experience, you can market that and tell people and really show that, which John's going to run through, is have amazing engaging facilities. James said that really do connect with people, and your teams are set up to deliver amazing service. But James talked about our mantra, meeting people where they are. It's something that we've really embraced, and I want to share that with you. And that flows into our flow of creating experience. Your culture, your brand, who you are, your identity shapes everything. The service that your team are delivering, your marketing, the sales, how you plan to keep people is driven by your brand. Not just a mission statement and vision and values that sit in a folder that are pretty naff. Do you have brand essence, this phrase that we've picked up a lot through, that really drive amazing service, drive your marketing team to put incredible messages out about your brand and why you're different? Or is it just dull and boring? Really have a brand that drives everything. And then you have your marketing plan. It's all about acquisition. It's all about acquiring, interest on your products and services specifically that are supported by this amazing brand. And having clear focus on who your audiences are for different products. The pressure on that is your marketing budgets they get spent very quickly, and the more you open it up, the more you segment your audiences you're trying to target, the harder it is. So you maybe need to really commit to bigger marketing budgets to really attract different audiences for different products, but it's got to be brand-led and campaign-led, which I'm going to talk about in a sec. That then hands over to how do you deal with people when they're inquiring and the whole acquisition flow, and then how do you onboard people and keep people? And the essence of that is all about meeting people where they are. So it's our mantra. So this is how it works, and everything. So you need a campaign-led strategy to marketing. So here's an example of a campaign we did in Leeds called Love Yourself that we ran for probably 9 months. And the plan there was, so it's not just your January campaign, your April campaign, your summer campaign. This was a campaign that ran for a big block of time. And the vision was that it was real people talking about the essence that if you love yourself, you have to love yourself, put yourself first, you would be more active. You'd focus on your mental health. You'd get outside more. You would have willpower. You'd make good decisions. You'd be connected. And we're the place to do that. And using what we call peer-to-peer approach to marketing, where you use testimonials to showcase that rather than just stock imagery. Real customers talking about loving themselves is important, putting themselves first. This campaign was hugely successful because people resonated with it. They really connected. And you can use that for anything. Gym, classes, badminton, swim, soft play, family time, all those things that I talked to you about. So it's all about attracting people, that big blue arrow of getting people interested with a campaign-led approach. You could drop an offer on there at the bottom if needed, but it's not offer-led. Then the essence of meeting people where they are from sales is how they inquire. If they ring, are your team connected? If they respond to a text through your social media, pay-per-click, through your website, they walk in. You meet them where they are. You have the preferred route. You train your teams to connect and not just push people into sales processes that are out of date, that we've used 10, 15 years ago, that we're still doing now. That adaptability to be able to, if someone walks in, you know, what is the process? How do your team deal with them? Rather than it just being about data capture and trying to sell, it's meeting them where they are, connecting, understanding who they are, what they want to do, and how we can help them. And then we have this flow, what we call onboarding, rather than an induction, is how you then bring people in and what level of support do they really want? Do they want one-to-ones? Do they want personal training? Do they just want to access stuff through your app and be really self-sufficient, or just do it at home? Or are they truly independent, don't want to talk to anyone and just crack on? We have pathways for everybody depending on your group and your experience, and we call that acquisition, flowing through to sales and onboarding. And the algorithm that we developed, that Tam, our head of customer experience, myself, we've really focused on producing, is fundamental to the sales journey and marketing, is really understanding that people come with different confidence and experience levels. So you can have someone who's ultra confident, ultra experienced, who knows their stuff, probably will come in, do a health commitment statement, boom, and we never talk to them. But actually, at the moment, emotional readiness, they might be really flat and demotivated because they've had a year of being at home, or they might be super confident, super motivated, super ready. Again, our process at the moment would just be to leave them be. But what about someone coming in who's really low in confidence, has never done this before, but they're so ready to do it? You need to be set up then to have the third is, we'll shape a plan for you. When do you want to do it? Where? What activity? How are we going to make this happen? What's the big purpose behind this? Are you doing it yourself, or are you doing it with friends? No, right. Real shaping it, what we call the logistics in plan. So rather than just a needs analysis, or for everybody that comes in, what's your experience levels? How ready are you? And we'll shape a plan for you. And that kind of shapes into, the team will go mad I'm sharing this, but this is an example. We have these key levels of flow for customer experience. Acquisition flows into onboarding. Then we want to keep people engaged and then reactivate people. So you manage your leads, you look at how they purchase, whether it be online, but that whole flow of dealing with inquiries is crucial. All persona-led focus, which John's going to talk about. Then we kick into, can they join quickly, at pace? And then what you've got here is this identify the person, our algorithm on meeting people where they are, and then signpost people into whether they're experienced or they need support. But if they're experienced, they still get options. We want to engage with them. But the key is to have this mantra. I'm not going through all of these, there's loads of options and they change depending on client by client. But we want, the aim of any customer is they're engaged and they're attending regularly. And how can your process set them up that you keep them in that engaged strategy? But then if you pick up, if they're starting to drop out, they're not interested, how do we reactivate them? So do you have customer pathways that really flow through these key stages? Or as James said, are they just set up for gym memberships? Can it be that if someone wants to get involved in swimming, they flow through this pathway? They want to play racket sports regularly, they flow through this pathway. But you've got options for everybody. Okay, final slide before I hand over to John. So our game plan for creating an amazing experience starts with what's your strategy, what's your outcomes, and your brand. Who are you? That flow that leads through. Do you then have the products, the facility mix to really, really drive that relevance and relatable, and the activities and the services that resonate with your community? As James said, the need. So are your facilities right? You then have a digital ecosystem of technology that all works together, from your CRM to your website to your app, rather than it all being bitty and all over the place. Is it all connected? Does it actually create a supporting structure? And am I getting the data out that I need to really assess and make sure that my customers feel connected and I can offer the services that and the agility to change? Do I have the right team? Are they trained? And then I'm going to market our butt off in terms of making sure people are aware of that, and that's what John's going to focus on. And my team set up to do that. So for us, there's a massive opportunity to meet people where they are now and have a campaign-led focus to marketing. But then once people come on board, you deliver an experience that's going to mean they're going to feel connected. So again, any questions at the end of my bit, please fire them in. But I'm going to hand over to John now, who's going to talk about the marketing opportunity.
Just double check that my slides showing to everybody.
Definitely.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate the time today. I've probably got about half an hour, 35 minutes of content. I appreciate this is a new way of working, so we wouldn't normally force people to stay in a meeting for a full 2 hours without taking a toilet break or topping up coffee. So if you do want to step away from your desk, switch off your camera, just take a minute. As we said, we are recording this, so if you do miss anything, you can catch up on it afterwards, and we'll share some slides as well. It is a new way of working. I was thinking when Dornan said that it was last February that I was meant to come up and speak to everybody, and probably my concerns about being a guest presenter coming up then was, would the technology work, would my train run to time? Sat here on my desk in Lancashire, my concern today is my Labrador just walked into the room, and will my puppy start eating office furniture? And if any of you have got dogs, or particularly Labradors, you'll appreciate that is a concern at the moment, but we'll see how we get on. So today, as we talk about, as Woody and James have said, about opportunities, and is there this isn't a group of marketeers we're talking to. We've got a whole range of different managers, chief execs, different people on the call. So I don't want to make it too specific to marketing, but there's certainly questions that you're going to ask your marketing team after this call, and sort of challenge them on what they're doing and how their approach is. Because marketing isn't that easy at the moment. Everyone thinks there's lots of opportunities, and there's lots of advertising channels, and there's a lot of cost-effective ways of marketing to what we did in the past. But we are battling every other company that's also making the most of those opportunities. If you take Google search advertising, Black Friday, New Year, keywords in leisure become really expensive, because every leisure provider, every PT, gym out there, swimming pool, is bidding on those keywords. So costs go up all the time at certain times of year, and consumers are more savvy than ever. So capturing data off people is what he said, them old-fashioned ways of taking a sales process, where inquiry cards were the lifeblood of the sales process, because we had to capture people's details. How many of us, we've got 30 of us on the call today, how many of us would actually give our details to a brand that we hadn't really had much experience with yet? We wouldn't. We don't share our details these days. So our philosophy and our ways of working have got to change, and we've got to think about how would we approach it as a business, but how are our consumers coming to the party as well. But there is opportunities, so I'm going to split this session into a couple of ways, really. There's marketing trends that you're going to be able to use within your business. As soon as you go back, you can chat to your teams, and some can be implemented straight away. Some might be restricted based on your resources, your structure, your vision, your budgets, and then hopefully there'll be tangible tips that you can implement despite all those sort of restrictions and frustrations you might have. So where I'm going to start is just really back to basics, basically just on the 4 A's of marketing, as we at T6 refer to them. So before we get into the action stage, which is where we throw ourselves into, we start setting up some Facebook adverts, we start promoting a new activity, we've got a new product to sell. Rather, what's the aim of the campaign to begin with? Is what he said, taking a campaign approach rather than this piecemeal approach of lots of little promotions throughout the year. How can we put them into a campaign that runs across more than the organisation and just fitness? So what's the aims and objectives? I'll then look briefly at the audience. So key with our communities today, talking about building healthy communities, and that community is at the focus of your campaigns. So how do we identify them? What are the tools that we can use within that action stage when we actually start planning some activity? And then the bit that often gets missed is assessing, taking time to find out what's worked and what hasn't. We often get onto this hamster wheel approach of running campaigns where Black Friday runs into January, runs into spring, runs into summer, and before we know it, we've done 12 months of activity, and we haven't really sat down and thought about what worked last year and do we need to do it again. We should have summer campaigns lined up already. The next stage will be autumn. Black Friday isn't actually scarily that far away, even though it's November, but we'll soon start planning for what we're going to do at that time of year. And now we should be looking back on previous years to learn from that. So jumping straight into a new trends and just looking at different ideas that are out there. So TikTok was around before lockdown, but it certainly came to more commonplace in the households during lockdown, with people doing silly dances and a certain generation, a younger generation, sharing a lot more content on that platform. Huge platform, 500 million users became 1 billion in the space of 12 months, so huge growth. Highest reach is among generally females, 16 to 24-year-olds. But that's not to say there's older markets on there as well. It's just specifically aimed at that target audience. Now, what other platforms have done is then launch very similar things. So Instagram launched Reels, which was just a direct competitor. YouTube recently, if you use YouTube on a regular basis, and amazing, most people do use YouTube quite regularly. They've introduced Shorts, which is just literally short session videos rather than long session videos that a lot of people watch on YouTube. But from a leisure operator's point of view, how useful are these? And it's difficult when you're probably just about managing your Facebook, maybe Instagram, maybe some have still got Twitter. You know, how do you add another few channels into your mix without a huge social media team? So even if you don't start to use them, at least appreciate why are users on these channels. They're looking for short, engaging video content, and I'll talk about video in a minute. But it's just thinking about, again, how we as consumers absorb information and engage with brands in a little bit different way. And you can see this as well in social media through how our customers are contacting businesses. Again, think about yourselves. How would you book a restaurant, inquire about cinema opening times? You know, yes, we might Google it, we might go direct to a website, but a lot of people are using social media. And whilst they're on social media, they're going to message that business. So Facebook's combining its 3 platforms of Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp into a sort of a single end-to-end encrypted messaging platform. So when you're on Messenger on your phone, you'll also be able to see your Instagram messages and Facebook messages all in the same place. And again, from a leisure operator's point of view, what's the benefit to that? Well, it just means that your customers are going to be engaging with your brand through social media, and specifically through messaging more directly than ever before. So yes, we've got processes for how staff answer the phone and protocols and scripts. Yes, we've got protocols for how people deal with emails, but where do we sit with social media messaging? Scarily as well, consumers want responses within 15 minutes. A lot of operators will try to get people back to people within 2 hours and maybe 1 hour, but Facebook's metric is 15 minutes, and there's a lot of research out there that says that's how fast most people want a reaction. And if they don't, they'll probably go to another brand, and then they'll go to another brand. So people are shopping around all the time. We'll do it ourselves. So how can you meet people where they are? Are you set up to deal with inbound messages on social media, Instagram, etc.? Social media is also challenging us with how people buy products. So we've all seen the growth in online commerce over the last few years, certainly the last decade. Amazon has hugely transformed how people shop and engage with brands and products. But growth on social, on e-commerce is massive as well. So Facebook's about to roll out Shops, which is its e-commerce platform. So it's making it a lot easier for people to make purchases online. Instagram, I've got Instagram checkout, which certain brands can get. If you're a certain size of brand or business on Instagram, you can set up your own online shop in effect. So again, as leisure operators, where do we sit? We might not want to directly vend our products through social media yet because we're not set up for it and we can't administer the technology potentially. But we've got to appreciate meeting our customers where they are, is that a lot of customers are buying online through these platforms, and how slick and efficient is our online joining process. And most of us cringe when we talk about that. I talk to a lot of operators about online joining, and it's not great, it's clunky, they have to give their details first, not all the pricing's on there, we can't administer certain things, we can't check if they're a student or a corporate. So there are barriers to it, but we need to constantly keep revisiting that because consumers are expecting to buy online more and more frequently. And especially certain groups of your community, ex-members, who don't need to come back in for a show around. They don't need to see facilities again. They'll just look to rejoin online a lot quicker. So if you're sending out an ex-member email, you can probably expect people to rejoin through an online joining link. Brand new customers, I don't think many will join online directly without having some touch point with the business, whether that's an online virtual tour or coming into the facilities first and actually seeing the facility. So we have to think about our audiences first, and a lot of the time we think about products first, which we have to, but the audience has to be considered as well. Who is your target audience? And as soon as you start to talk about an audience focused strategy within your marketing, you start to remind yourselves that people are at the heart of our services. We aren't Amazon. We're not selling widgets and specific products that tangibly people can touch. We want to humanize our product and remind people that, you know, it's not a tangible thing. You know, improving your mental health, losing weight, feeling better about yourself, releasing them endorphins, sleeping better. That's the product that we're selling. The facilities that they use to achieve that is the outcomes. So we have to think about audiences first, because it's not the treadmills directly that we're selling in the facilities, and it's not the swimming pool, it's the outcomes. So you might take a traditional approach to this and look at Mosaic profiles. Sport England have their market segments as well. The data is a little bit dated. If you look at the older generations, they'll be very typical and say that an older generation reads the Daily Mail, they like mail shots through the door, they're not on social media, they're not good with technology. But at what point does that older generation age kick in? Because my parents are in their 60s and just about 70s. My mum's on every platform going. She's got an iPad, she's got a mobile, she's got a laptop. She very much counters that approach to what a Mosaic profile would define for that audience. And we're seeing that as well when we work with some of our partners. So ShapeMaster is one of our partners that we do a lot of advertising for their power-assisted exercise suites that you'll see around the country, traditionally known as like toning suites. So that market is very much the 65 plus. A lot of them are female only, and we get huge responses from Facebook advertising. If we'd have looked at Experian data and Mosaic, it would have said that actually we should be mail shotting those people. We should be in B&Q on Wednesday when they do the senior discounts. But actually, Facebook advertising for efficiency with small budgets is working really well to target an older group. So sometimes we have to flip it on its head. And what we do often, though, if we don't look at our specific audiences, we end up with campaigns like this. And Woody alluded to it, that we end up with a very old-fashioned, if it was fitness-led marketing that we were looking at, we pick an image, we pick an offer, and that's the campaign. And it's really just a short-term promotion. It's shape up for summer, spring into fitness, new year, new you, all the ones that we can reel off and we've done for years. It's not really specifically about the audience, it's about an offer and our facilities. So where we can get to with looking at personas or audiences is to spend some time as a team chatting to find out what are the demographics, geographics, and often what we miss, the psychographics of our customer base. Who is our audience in the community and what will they respond to? And it is them psychographics, the bottom one on that slide, that makes a big difference. So, you know, if you learned about myself, you'd know my age and my gender and where I live. But actually, what's more important is what makes me tick, what motivates me to exercise. Do I have a motivation to exercise? What's my preference? What are the barriers to exercise that I might experience? And that allows you to really personalize marketing. And this idea of personalized marketing has been around for a while. And I think some companies like Coca-Cola did it very well, where they actually looked at putting people's names and, you know, a huge campaign for them. Cadbury's did something very similar where, and you can still do this on Cadbury's for birthdays and gifts, and you can personalize gifts. So consumers, again, we're back to the public and us as a buying community. How are we looking to engage with the business? We want it to be a personalized approach because the stats do speak for themselves. You know, that 80% of consumers are likely to do business with a company that offers a personal experience. We as consumers, as buyers, we don't like generic advertising. We want it to be personalized to ourselves. So the thing that's happening in the marketplace at the moment, marketing, is that Apple and Google Chrome are starting to restrict the use of cookies and tracking data, which means that adverts will get less personal because for advertisers like us, we're having to use personal data, which the public don't like. but at the same time, the public do like more personalised adverts. So it'll be interesting over the next year or so whether people actually opt into receiving those adverts or whether the public just stand true to what people are saying and that we don't want to share our data and we just want this generic experience. But what we're trying to get to the point, and when we look outside our industry, is this idea that advertising is very much tailored to a specific audience. So TUI or Thompson, as they were, have everything from winter breaks to cruises to family-focused activities and holidays. But the artwork on screen was very much aimed at families. They specifically target the mums a lot of the time. The females are the head of the household, if you will, who often make a lot of the decisions. Centre Parks did this as well, very good advertising. But when you look at TUI's other marketing for other activities and holiday types, this is the same company with a very different look and feel for a different audience. It's about couples, indulgence, different setting, about the location, it's about the atmosphere, relaxation. So they know their target audiences and they do that. Their cruises, you'll notice that the cruises is very much aimed at an older market than couples or families. So they know who their audience is. What we've done in leisure specifically, this is a client of ours at Warwick Sport, university facility, but still caters for the local public and the community. They broke it down into some of their audiences as sort of passionate participators, so more elite performers on the left-hand side, through to leisure lovers, sort of just general activity, people who enjoy going to the gym as a session every now and again. So anything from elite athletes at one end through to first-time novices. And we looked at the language that was used, the images that's used as well, and the channels that people are on. So this sheet is just an example. Apologies, there's a lot of small text on there depending on the size of your screen, but we can share this as a template for you to use with your teams to sit down and say, we need to create some personas for each of our service areas, for each of our products, who is likely to engage with that business and that service. And then look at what are their demographics, geographics, psychographics, what are their barriers to exercise, what are their motivations, what images would they aspire to, and that will then start to determine your marketing strategy and the type of channels and type of materials that you start to produce. Woody mentioned data, and we don't want to talk about data too much. It starts to feel cold. It starts to feel like we're not about the humans in our businesses, whether that's staff or our customers. But you have to look at the data to drive the business. The one thing for me that stands out when I'm looking at data with clients is the lifetime value of a member. So if we do look at fitness memberships, and apologies, we've said we do focus too much on fitness memberships, but it's a good example. If we look at the average lifetime value of any of our members, are they staying with us 3 months or 18 months? There's a big difference when it comes down to running a referral program. If you're offering a free month for everyone who refers a friend, if all them new members that you gather are only staying with us for 3 months, you're giving away a third of that person's membership if you're then going to give a free month away and people are only going to stay for 3. If you're getting people to stay for 18 months on average, you now know that that free month is worth only 1/18 of a membership. So it's a smaller discount, and could you therefore incentivize people with 2 months free? So a bigger incentive, but you're capturing people for 18 months. So you have to use the data in a clever way, and there's lots of data that you could use. 3 key areas that I think you should look at as a business and understand is your current members. So what are their usage patterns? You've got a lot of data on these within your CRM. It's just whether you access it. Recent joiners, so people who've been prepared to join since COVID, the last few months, what do they look like? Because they might be very different people to what you've engaged with in the past. And then recent cancellations, who's dropped out over this period of time, and whether they've moved it just instantly cancelled, whether they've gone from frozen to cancelled, what's put them off, what's turned them away from the business. And then the last one is to start looking at prospects again. Since 2018, when GDPR kicked in, a lot of businesses have avoided gathering data, or they've just put their heads in the sand and ignored it for a while. But you do need to build your prospect databases. You can do it ethically and morally and comply with GDPR. But it's been 3 years. If you'd have actually got that all sorted, the volume of data that you'd have to then target the community, inform your marketing decisions will be so much better. So just have a look at that with your team in terms of gathering your data again. Some specific audiences to consider. I think research is one that's forgotten about. People are actually looking for your business, so they've got intent to buy. So we're not advertising to these on Facebook or Instagram where we're interruption-based marketing, where we're trying to get through to them and they're not particularly interested. These are people who are actively looking for your services. So when was the last time you Googled your business? When was the last time you updated your My Business profile? When was the last time you checked your review status on Trustpilot or TripAdvisor? Would you be surprised to find that you're actually on them channels? You know, have a look and explore what people who are researching your business find out, and then start to look at how you can use content to nudge those people further down the sales funnel. James talked about Generation C, and I'll come back to that in a brief moment, but a lot of the time with marketing, we look at different generations and how they've approached, a bit like the Mosaic and Experian type data, but looking at these generations as they come through, there's some little ones that crop in, Xennials sort of fit in between some of these generations, and people span generations. It's not as easy as saying, right, people who were born in 1986 and 1995 are very, very different, but the reliance on technology changes over a period of time, and the importance of conservation, environmental issues change. People become more aware as that becomes more prevalent in society. So you can look at certain generations, but as I use my parents, my mum is a baby boomer, but very much, you know, would have all the technology available and not be a traditional baby boomer. My dad lives in the same household, same postcode, will be targeted in the same way, but he's very much more old school. He likes his newspaper. He walks on a Sunday morning to the newsagents and gets the paper. Doesn't have technology. He still uses SMS messaging and struggles typing on that. So we need to look at these different generations. And Generation C that James mentioned is this idea of a connected consumer. It spans all generations. And how do we appeal to that group? And it's difficult because you've got all ages and different affluence levels. So it's quite a different generation to consider, but it does make us think as marketeers about the digital journey. How are people engaging with our materials? It's not one printed item that they get. It's not a banner that they just see. They're engaging on social media and online all the time. So with your social audience, I suppose, as I said before, it's just looking at is Facebook the right channel that you should be on? 100% for leisure, definitely. Twitter is a declining channel. It's hard to break through. It's a good channel for partnership working, for working with other businesses and brands. If you've got a lot of partners and networks in your community, councillors like Twitter, if you very much link to the council and want to promote your brand and your business through there to the local politicians, then Twitter's the place to do it. Instagram's a hugely growing platform that we'll all be aware of. So Facebook and Instagram will be givens. YouTube is often forgotten about as a social channel, and it isn't really a social channel, but it's one to consider, and I'll mention that in a minute. The other audience that I can avoid talking about is a post-COVID audience. As Woody said, we have to consider that within our marketing campaigns. And how are all our audiences affected by COVID, whether that's affected during the pandemic for health reasons, or issues as we come out of COVID in terms of our facilities safe to return to? Are they clean? Is there support there? All these questions that people have, we have to start to answer. And how we do that is through content marketing, which isn't a new concept, but it's one that leisure struggles with, because we still like our no joining fee deals, our buy one, get one half price, join for £1, all the traditional marketing that we've done. And I suppose the budget gyms have pushed us into that corner in terms of being price led. But actually, if we go back to what we're about people and engaging with the community. So how do we use content marketing to do that? Because what we're trying to do is create action. In all our marketing campaigns, we want people to take action, and that might be to join online if we want to actually get a sale, but it might be to read a blog, understand our business, engage with the brand, download a free trial. But what we need to do before we can get to that stage of customers taking action is to deliver value in the business. People have got to see some value in us and trust us. And to do that, we've got to create content that informs and educates. Great example of this, sort of within leisure, within our sphere, is Joe Wicks. Love him or hate him, he's coined the king of content marketing. He started out as an instructor just sharing 15-second video recipes. So almost going back 10 years to what he did was what TikTok and Reels are doing now, which is short, intense, little video content. And now as a multimillionaire, you know, you only have to go to his Amazon store to realize that actually how many products he does sell, but how much free content he gives away is also immense. The Joe Wicks marketing machine, when you look at how they go about it, they talk about on their blogs, and when you read the research, it takes 6 to 12 weeks to convert an initial follower through to a customer with Joe Wicks. So they'll spend up to 3 months giving lots of content for free before someone will actually buy a product with him. And again, people in this group will probably experience that Joe Wicks has touched it in some way, whether it was directly through the PE with Joe Wicks during lockdown, or seeing some recipes online, or seeing him on GMTV in the mornings promoting his products, but we'll engage in some way. And we haven't bought anything yet, and it takes a long time to do that. So are we prepared as leisure operators to invest that time in producing content that might not get someone to take action today, but might encourage them to join when the clocks change in October, because that's when their lifestyle changes and they need to take action? Or, you know, thinking about people joining for Black Friday, people with disposable income at certain times of the year. So our content marketing is to change. A few ideas on the screen. Again, I'm not going to dwell on them because I've got a lot of content to still get through, but there's lots of ideas when you sit as a team, and I'm talking a team of receptionists, your gym staff, your swimming instructors, the whole team, and getting involved in content marketing, because it's not just the marketing team that will come up with that content. It relies on the gym team creating a few articles, the swim instructors giving some top tips, people being prepared to go on camera and talk. So when we talk about content marketing, it's not just articles and blogs, it's actually creating it into videos. For me, this came to front recently. So JD Gyms opened up in Blackburn, where I live. So I thought I'd join the gym, just go through that budget gym process and see what it's like. It was a cold, sterile environment. It wasn't for me. I've cancelled already, but it was me. It was more of an experiment. But it was interesting, the content they led me to. There's no induction, there's no face-to-face contact. This video that's playing, and apologies if it's a bit laggy on your screens, but this was their induction video. So about 6-minute video to watch. And yes, I did watch it because even as a confident gym goer, I wanted to know what I was going to experience. I didn't want to get embarrassed at the QR code scan as I went in. So it was important, but how could we as operators build on those videos? Because there's lots of questions that our customers are thinking about that we need to answer. Now, you might have some of these as frequently asked questions on your websites, but also can you create little videos that answer these questions and become the font of knowledge when anybody in your area is looking to do this? You know, there are people Googling what are free weights? You know, people just exploring that concept. Well, why isn't that question answered on your website? Why don't we get the gym team to answer that question? That adds a bit of trust and value in the organisation. So when they're at a point where they think, well, I need to go and join a gym, they'll remember back to that article, and then you can nudge them down that sales process. Woody mentioned this notion of using testimonials a lot. We do it a lot with our clients, is really focus on this peer-to-peer approach. How do we get real people to share real examples? Weight Watchers have done it really well for years. You know, real people, real results, before and afters. It's the whole setup of how Weight Watchers operates. But how can we do it? Because it really does not only build trust in the organisation, but it motivates the staff to see the results as well. We sort of see it on a day-to-day basis, but we actually want to bring it to life. It's not an easy thing, though, to actually gather testimonials and get them from customers. You do need your staff on board. It relies on it being part of your member journey, your customer flow through the building. It's not just a gym testimony that we're seeking out. It's for the whole business. How do we get success stories from the kids on swimming lessons, from badminton players, from the tumble top session, from the grandparents bringing the grandchildren in? So it's a wider organisational approach than just the gym teams. Sticking with the video theme, over the last 12 months, we've got used to going live. Probably a lot of the class instructors anyway have been used to being on camera. So trying to build on that, and how do we use that streaming service to share different knowledge, whether that's fitness tips, nutritional workshops, new products and announcements. Your staff will cringe initially and think, well, I don't want to go on camera, but you know, we're only talking 30 seconds, 10 seconds sometimes just to go on camera, and talk about a new product that we're launching and then steer them into the website for more information. But putting a real face behind your products will make a huge difference. With video, people think about TV advertising as being exclusive for the big brands, and in a lot of cases it is. If you're thinking about the Christmas adverts that we see from John Lewis and Tesco, Waitrose, they are huge budgets. You know, they're spending nearly £500,000 sometimes on creating those adverts. That's just the creation of the advert, let alone the actual cost to produce it and put it on TV. But the one thing I've brought into these slides is this AdSmart from Sky, which allows you to look at your TV advertising in a different way and think about it like you do with your Facebook advertising. It's like a pay-per-view service where AdSmart only target the audience that you want to reach. So you can say to AdSmart, we want to target affluent households within a 2-kilometre radius of this postcode. And then they will only show that advert to people when they're watching their Sky or Virgin, so it's through the digital boxes. It's not ITV advertising, that's separate, it's not Channel 5. It is Channel 4 because Sky on Channel 4. But in effect, what happens is so this advert that's running is for Active Leicester. We've told AdSmart that we want to target a certain group of people. And what they do is they overlay this advert on top of the Fairy Liquid advert or the Cadbury's advert, whatever's playing on that person's TV at that moment in time, and you pay only when people watch 75% of that content. There is a minimum £3,000 entry to this, so it's not for every campaign and for every promotion and service that you offer, but it is lower cost TV advertising than what would have been considered beforehand. There is some production cost to produce an advert that's suitable for TV advertising, but that can be as simple as what's showing on screen, which is some basic footage of video with text overlays. So it's not as exclusive as it was in the past. So again, if you want to get in touch, we can explain a bit more about AdSmart. Not going to do a whole section on Facebook advertising because it's a session on itself, but using video in your advertising will hugely get bigger click-through rates, engagement rates, and you'll see a massive transformation when we start to use more video. In terms of lead generation, just we focus too much on digital sometimes, and I've talked a lot about social media, videos, online, Facebook, Instagram. It is only part of that story though when we look at our approach to marketing. You still have to look at how your incoming calls are dealt with, how people on show rounds are dealt with. So the digital advertising is just part of that whole picture. And what you need to bring together is this omni-channel approach. So it's not single channel, it's not even multi-channel. Omni-channel means that you take all the channels and integrate them together. So people will flow through these different channels. So they might see a Facebook advert that sends them into a website, that captures some information, that sends them an email, they get a virtual tour, and then they take a trial pass, and then they join. That flow needs to be mapped out before we start promoting the passes at this end without even thinking about how it all fits together. So with omnichannel, you need to consider both sides of your marketing strategies. You know, you've got Facebook and advertising, your push marketing, where you're actively pushing it onto people, but you've got to consider the pull as well. Then researchers, people who are looking for information, how are you in those spaces at that moment in time? I'm going to skip a couple of slides just to keep us on track. Interesting notion that came up during lockdown was collaboration, and there's a great example that I'll put up on the screen here that we saw of businesses coming together that you wouldn't have ever thought of. This was a post from Burger King that were actively saying, go and order from McDonald's. And within this little note from Burger King, it says, you know, go to Pizza Hut, go to Papa John's, go to any restaurant, just use our industry. It was them sort of preaching on behalf of the industry. And a lot of pubs and restaurants have come together to do this as well. So they've joined forces in their local community. So with yourselves, I'm not saying go and team up with Pure Gym or your competitors directly, but who are your partners? Who can you collaborate better with in your market, and share marketing expertise, share audiences, share insight, just to become a little bit more about the community around you. Lastly, I can't do a marketing webinar without talking about YouTube, and especially talking about video so much. It is the second biggest search engine on the planet behind Google. Google owns YouTube, so they've pretty much got the monopoly on search. So 80% of internet traffic is video these days. So video is the top ranking blog researching piece that you can find year on year. People are looking for articles around video marketing. So we need to look at how we use video, where do we store it, and use YouTube not just as a video library, but it's an advertising channel as well. Yes, you can advertise on YouTube, you can advertise on Google as well through search advertising, but this allows to target people specifically who are looking for your services based on their demographics, their psychographics, their website history, and you can start to target people on Google, YouTube, as well as Facebook and Instagram. So again, challenging your marketing teams. We're on Facebook, and I imagine you're doing Facebook advertising, but are we using Google display adverts? Are we using YouTube search adverts? Are we using YouTube video adverts? Because that'll start to inform your SEO strategy, how you build your websites, and start to look at that as well. So there's a huge range of opportunities on YouTube and Google. So that brings us back to where we started. As you can see, the action stage is quite exciting in terms of the tools and things that you can get into to actually engage with your community and get them to your facilities and to your products and services. But you have to think about the audience to begin with, and you have to think about why you're on there in the first place and who you're trying to approach. So that's everything from myself. I'll bring Woody, James, Dornan back into the call. Give you a couple of minutes just to take stock of everything we've spoken about. If you do have to dash off, thank you very much for your time, but we will be staying on for the next 10-15 minutes. If anybody's got any questions and answers, we'll let you have a minute to pop them into the chat box. I've been chatting away, so I think some have come in. So I'll stop talking for a minute. Thank you for your time, for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Obviously appreciate you taking your time out today. We know it's busy, and hopefully you managed to get a cup of tea, a toilet break, and you know, hopefully get out of today what you needed to. I think the main thing for me is to impart on you, is to take away really, is it's that looking at the approach of inside the box merged with outside of the box, and very much meeting the community where you are. You know, don't be in that typical leisure centre definition. Don't fall into the direct debit member only trap, because as a sector and what you deliver, we are so much more than that. You know, and being able to determine what matters most to you and commit to the process, because fundamentally we're all in the business of either creating, contributing, or championing active populations out there. So if you do have any questions, we're happy to stick around. If not, you're more than welcome to, as John said, pop off the call, grab some lunch, and we can feed anything back via email as necessary, Dornan.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant, James. So everyone, one of the things John mentioned was that obviously the whole session's recorded, so we will get the video and we'll share that out. The link, we'll get it onto the SLNG YouTube channel and share the link there. The other thing John talked about was the customer persona sheet. So John, yeah, if you've got that in a sort of PDF and pop that up, that would be absolutely excellent. And I think more than anything, yeah, it's quite a lot of information really to take in, and we appreciate that. If you do have any immediate questions, as the guys have said, to pop it into the chat. But if you're finding that it's something that you need to possibly go away and reflect on, then certainly come back, and because you know you covered quite a lot of stuff. I know that I've been sort of scribbling, and at least I've got a good few pages here anyway. Brilliant. I mean, we can't thank you enough for what you've actually covered. I think, if anything, as I said, everyone probably needs that reflect time, unless there's any immediate questions jumping out, but not really seeing too much coming through on the chat, and possibly like that, other people have got other commitments, you know.
John, I won't say, I won't embarrass per se, but they contacted me on LinkedIn, they'd seen that this session was coming up, so they had a question, and I suppose I'm going to ask it to Woody, because it was about at what stage do we, they were asking about freezing members, and at what stage do we unfreeze members? And they were just saying, what are other operators doing with regards to frozen members? So.
Yeah, I think there was this whole journey through lockdown of whether you went two phrases, you went nuclear and pressed the button and had a true idea of where you were, or you just slowly extended them out. I think most people now are at the point where they've said to people, we're unfreezing you unless you want to refreeze. And I think you should be at the point now where you're doing that. I wouldn't just be letting people freeze without any comms. I would be contacting everybody to say, we're about to unfreeze you, but you can refreeze based on these criteria. Otherwise, you've just got this pool of members that are just sitting there that you have no clue how they feel. So the key is that you've got options for people if they want to stay frozen or not. But yeah, I think most have done that. I think it's very few that are still sitting on that unknown, but I wouldn't want to be sitting not knowing how people feel. So definitely my position. And go on, Dawn.
Interestingly enough, one of the things actually, I was part with the SLNG committee last week, and one of the things we're looking to actually put out is the 3 time periods, you know, how all the members were performing in key areas before lockdown, after the first lockdown, reopening after the first lockdown, and then reopening after the second one. And just to try and get actually some metrics as to where are they now, because one of the things that's really came up time and time again is this rich organic data that everyone gets now, because they're really knowing who's in their building and what they're doing, whereas so many people before were actually coming in, possibly not even interacting with reception, possibly maybe using the facilities and not even paying or paying the right rates. And I think there's some key things off of COVID and the booking process that I don't think they want to lose anytime soon.
No, definitely. And the amount of people that couldn't tell before lockdown, so out of the people that, you know, members, customers you've got who'd been in the month before, the 2 months before, you know, it was really difficult to tell who'd really been in, what they'd used. So you didn't really know who was your real regulars and who hadn't been in. It was a bit of a mess. So how you actually get data on who uses what to define, you know, I think has been an eye opener for people, definitely. And yeah, big time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think without solving that frozen members problem, people keep saying to us, you know, everyone's always asking what are other operators doing, where's everyone else at, and just trying to gather together some metrics on sales and recovery and where memberships are at. It feels like it's going to be July before anybody can really give a clear picture of what their first DD runs look like without all the noise that's happening on their memberships with frozen members and returning. You know, a lot of people are reporting really high sales, but is that because they're counting their unfreezing members as a new sale? There's a real mix match in the industry at the moment.
That's the big thing. Everyone's saying it's buoyant, we've got lots of sales. When you drill down, we're doing it consistently. It's over half of people rejoining. So that's great. That's brilliant. But it's not true new sales in the sense that it's great you've got them back in, but it does feel it's great. But it's about bounce back, you know, and cool.
Definitely, and I think one of the other things is actually getting them to look at who are our brand new people that we've never had before, because that's the ones that I think it's reaching the people who were never active before, but who'd made that decision to come in and like overcome barriers like confidence and lack of experience to. I think there's some real metrics there, interesting metrics once we put it out to all the members and see what sort of results we get. So I'll keep you posted with that survey, and obviously all the members too. We're just looking together to put some questions together, and everybody's anonymised in it, but it's just to get some headline figures on how everyone's doing. So yeah, I think that'll be quite interesting. We'll get maybe a bit of a picture of what's happening in Scotland.
Perfect. Thanks, Don. And that sounds like a good time to conclude there, doesn't it? And as we say, if anybody's got any questions, they can filter through. I think most of the members know where we are and how to reach us. But yeah, very grateful for everybody's time, and thank you, Don, and obviously for working with us to schedule this and inputs as well. We're very appreciative and look forward to hopefully seeing everybody in person in the not too distant future.
Well, hopefully December. The annual conference is still in the date and diary, 1st and 2nd of December. So make sure you've still got that as a placeholder. And yeah, thank you guys. We really appreciate everything you've done for us today. Thank you.
Perfect. Have a great day. Bye.
Cheers. Bye now.